Good morning, everyone. Thank you for watching my little video, the Zen of Trauma. This is part 2, and I'd like to talk about Zen, mindfulness, and the spirit. Zen is not easy to define. It's like the Tao. That can be spoken is not the Tao, and I think the same thing applies to Zen. Whenever we try to define Zen, we are failing to see it. Zen is not a it's not a concept. It's not a belief. It's existence itself, or as Kenneth Roshi used to say, Zen is eternal life. So anyway, so Zen is difficult. There's a danger in attempting to define Zen, because we kill it, and as I said, we kill it when we try to define it. Best to simply be in the practice. Now, what do I say? Spirit, especially the human spirit, is something like Zen itself. It's elusive. We sometimes experience it, feel it. Some say it speaks to us. I believe it's more a gestalt of the whole thing, of our body and our connection with our environment and with the larger universe, with the community and so on. So I think spirit is much more a feeling that results from connection. Anyway, so a spiritual practice then is a practice that enables us, I think, to make those connections and to experience directly ourselves in the universe. Now, one of the major practices of Zen is mindfulness, of Buddhist practice in general, but in Zen in particular, mindfulness practice. People will say that the core practice in Soto Zen is sitting, is shikantaza, the act of just sitting, wholeheartedly hitting the mark. But that's a practice that develops our mindful attention. When we sit and face a wall and don't move and just be present on that cushion, many things come up. We experience pain, we experience joy, we experience all kinds of things. And the one thing that's important about it, though, is we recognize that we're actually experiencing it because we've quieted down, we've stopped. I think one of the key practices then is to just stop. So as we're going through our day, it's important, I think, to notice that we are busy bodies. We're running around like chickens with their head cut off. And just stop. Take a moment. Breathe. Breathe in and breathe out. Pay attention to how your body feels, what you're doing with your hands, what you're doing with your eyes, what you're doing with your head, and so on. So we might think that mindfulness is a tool, but that would be gutting it, in effect. We can use it as a tool, just like we can use meditation as a tool. But when we do that, we're not really doing it. What we're doing is using a tool. The actual practice is a practice of integration, of letting go of the self and directly experiencing ourselves in relation to our environment, in relation to our universe, and so on. Master Dogen once said that to study the self is to study the way. To study the way is to allow self, mind, and body to fall away. Allowing mind and body to fall away we are enlightened by the myriad things. It's a very interesting statement. It's in the Genzo Koan, which is one of the fascicles in his Showa Genzo, his vast work of reflection on the practice. I had a friend, I have a friend who used to say that he didn't like to talk about spiritual because that was so hard and meant so many things to so many different things to so many people. And that's true, I think. And spiritual practice suggests something to folks, something that in the Zen world it's not. What it's not, spiritual practice in the Zen world is not elevating yourself. It's not about turning yourself into some luminary or even enlightened person. It's more about being present. And in that presence, we notice. For trauma survivors, this is very difficult, I think. It's challenging because as we're sitting quietly facing a wall, things come up, memories come up, intrusive thoughts, flashbacks, and so on. And we may very well re-experience the traumatic event or events as we're sitting there. Now, for some of us, that's pretty risky, I think. I know it was, for me, it was a difficult practice to begin with. Yet, it's said, there's an old, how do I say this? In Genesis, one of the things that God tells Adam to do is go out and name everything. Because when you name everything, you have dominion over it. And I think that that's important to keep in mind, that there's power in naming something. And you can't name it unless you've experienced it, in my opinion. So for a trauma survivor to be able to name the trauma and experience it over and over and over again in a controlled fashion is one way that we begin to have mastery over the event itself, the memory of the event. I know when I was a therapist, I would often do public talks on trauma, and every time I did a public talk in various venues, I would tell my story of my traumatic event. And over time, what it ended up happening is the power of that event to take control of me through emotional responses diminished. And I began to feel much more at peace with it. So saying something over and over and over again, like, for example, what they do in AA, hi, I'm Harvey, I'm an alcoholic. What you're doing is you're naming the thing, and in the naming of the thing, you begin to have some mastery over it. So I'd like you to keep that in mind as we move along through this series. Let's see, what else do I need to say about this? I'm using my little pamphlet called The Zen of Trauma, which is available through Amazon, by the way. Okay, let's think about this practice of mindfulness. What are you doing right now as you're watching this video? Literally, what are you doing? Maybe you're sitting down on a chair or on a sofa or at your desk. Okay. Pay attention to what your body is experiencing right now in this moment. Do you experience the air coming in through your nostrils down into your lungs? Do you experience it leaving your body? You experience your hands and what your hands are doing. My hands are just hanging in the air. My elbows, however, are resting on the armrests. I have a dog off to my right, my dog Suki, and I have books behind me, as I can see through this camera. The act of being present and being mindful in that presence is very important to us, I think. I think that what we can say is this. I'll read you a little comment that I wrote some time ago. Do you notice that as soon as you ask questions, like, what are you doing? Awareness arises, on the one hand, and a separation of you from what you are doing arises as well. This is the separation mind that creates what we call dualism. Paradoxically, mindful practice allows the mind to relax and let go so that what we do and what we experience are one. Keep in mind that mindfulness practice isn't mindfulness. Mindfulness practice is mindfulness practice. It's the Buddha taught on the four establishments of mindfulness in the sutra that you should breathe in and say to yourself, breathing in, I'm aware I'm breathing in. Breathing out, I'm aware I'm breathing out. Breathing in, I'm aware of a long breath. Breathing out, I'm aware of a short breath, and so on. So you're basically noticing what's going on in your body and telling yourself what it is you're doing and experiencing. What that does is it creates a dualism between yourself and the experience. True mindfulness has no dualism. It's completely united. It's a unification practice. So when we do Samu or working meditation in a retreat, we want to become one with the work we do. That is to say, not be focused on the end goal of completing the task, but being fully present doing the task, in the task itself. So if you're polishing the Buddha on the altar, you simply polish the Buddha. And you don't care or think about whether you're going to be done polishing that Buddha or not. You just experience polishing the Buddha, putting the polish on the Buddha, rubbing the Buddha, kind of like they did in that movie, Wax On, Wax Off. It's just a matter of being present and completely one with the experience. Next, in the next video, I'm going to talk about three aspects of our existence and how trauma disturbs them and what we can do about it. Okay? Take care, and thank you again for listening.